Dawn of Chrysalis by Sam B. Miller II. Chapter 2. Awakening. Dr. Jamins Guyi could tell from the mild pins and needles feeling in his arms and legs that he was coming out from under the influence of the stasis field. Based upon his research about the new colonization planet HG-281, his stasis had lasted around 31 years. Yes, he thought as his body awakened from the effects of long-term sleep. The one-way trip of 30 light years to travel from Chrysalis to HG-281, and a generous 1 year for the thuggish military to kill or capture the animalistic humans reported to infest the colonization planet. The hinged top of his stasis pod lifted up and away, revealing a male Chrysalis wearing a dark green, high-collared coat and a broad-brimmed, colorful hat hanging off his shoulders by a draw-cord tied under his chin. The most startling sight as Guyi's eyes focused on the figure, levering up the pod cover, was a jeweled Chrysalis skull tie clasp holding a thin black tie around the male's neck. The coat and hat must be some kind of new defensive armor, he thought, as he levered himself out of his pod and peered around the awakening chamber. Two other Chrysalis soldiers were helping other colonists out of stasis pods and guiding them toward the adjoining cafeteria. Feeling a little dizzy and in need of something to raise his glucose level, Guyi allowed the Chrysalis to take hold of his right arm and lead him toward the cafeteria doorway. "Dr. Guyi, let's get some food and liquid in your stomach so you'll begin to feel normal. There will be a debrief shortly." A half hour later, the Chrysalis wearing the green coat and broad-brimmed hat walked to the presentation dais in the forward area of the cafeteria and gazed out at his audience. The fellow had donned a broad leather bandolier over his right shoulder, which held a cutter ray pistol holstered in its center with extra loops for 3 spare power modules. The two other Chrysalis soldiers took seats in a far corner of the room. Dr. Guyi noticed none of the soldiers were wearing the standard issue combat vests he had invented. Combat vests radiated an electrical field which deflected enemy projectiles such as subsonic metal slugs and arrows and boosted the normal muscular strength of soldiers by approximately 5 times. Even more curious were jeweled pendants hanging around the necks of the two soldiers lounging in the far corner. Guyi had never seen such ornamentation before. Necklaces weren't standard issue for military grunts. Each pendant appeared to be a silvery porcelain rectangle surrounding a broad blue stone shot through with dark speckles and white flecks. The odd jewelry hung around their necks on a medium-weight chain made from the same silvery porcelain substance. Jamins felt like his eyes were playing tricks on him, because the black speckles and white flecks in the blue stone seemed to be in constant swirling motion. The visual effect was almost hypnotic. Must still be suffering from lingering effects of stasis, he thought to himself. The weapons holstered in the utility belts of the soldiers were also not standard-issue cutter ray pistols. Instead of the red pistol with a raised cream-colored star pattern logo and 2 dark green discs surrounding the barrel end, the soldiers' pistols were completely dark black, smaller and thinner than standard pistols. No discs surrounded the barrels. What appeared to be a short, silvery antenna jutted from the top of the barrel near the rear sight. A selector knob jutted from the top of the pistol just above the trigger housing. All in all, the black pistols looked small and delicate. Curious, Guyi thought to himself with smug confidence. I need to examine one of those new pistols and see how it functions. No doubt I can improve on the design. Dr. Guyi had seated himself on purpose in the center of the long cafeteria table, directly in front of the presentation area. The nourishment he had consumed had wiped away most of the after effects from stasis. He felt mentally and physically sharp. As the smartest person in the room, just ask him, he was impatient to set foot on the new colonization planet and review the primitive technological garbage the human animals had managed to develop prior to their rescue from meaningless obscurity by the benevolent conquering horde of Chrysalis. Peering about the room, he counted 24 Chrysalis in various stages of boredom or eagerness, depending upon each person's past experience with the new colonization planet. Experienced people were bored. They only wanted to know the salient facts needed to perform their duties. Otherwise, they simply wished to be transported to the planet and left alone. People on their first mission looked like eager puplins, wide-eyed, bushy-tailed, and generally excited to begin any kind of work on a brand new planet. Guyi was a member of the experienced group. He'd been on 3 previous colonization planets and knew the drill. The Chrysalis Empire had never and would never encounter a race of beings capable of challenging their technology, let alone their physical and mental superiority. At the moment, the biggest question in Dr. Guyi's mind was when the next transport was scheduled to leave the rickshaw and fly to HG-281 with his specialized laboratory equipment. He was completely unprepared mentally, emotionally, and psychologically for the facts announced about the colonization efforts on HG-281. Wrapping a metal telescoping pointer against the large view screen mounted on the bulkhead for attention, the green-coated Chrysalis stated, "May I please have your attention? I am obliged to inform you the colonization of planet HG-281 has utterly failed. The only mothership to survive the counterattack by the inhabitants of the planet is the command vessel Versiliac Zur." A moment of shocked silence was followed by wild shouts of disbelief thundering from the assembled group. Several balled fists slammed down on the metal tables with resounding bangs, and some of the scientists rose from their seats, the more timid ones looking about for an exit door. The shouts included, "What? Impossible! Lies!" and one, "There's no damn way!" "Ladies and gentlemen, please calm yourselves, I will explain," the hat-wearing Chrysalis calmly announced. "My name is Whatsit. I was aboard the scout ship Ur-Berik, one of the original planetary survey ships dispatched to planet HG-281 over 67 years ago. The Ur-Berik was shot out of the sky by the HG-281 natives, its crew killed, and I was captured." Studying the array of facial expressions and the random thoughts flashing through the minds of the assembled crowd, there was little doubt the ingrained perception of Chrysalis' superiority over all other lower life forms was going to be difficult to crack. The pompous response from Dr. Guyi said it all. "Your story is patently impossible and therefore false," he declared to the nods of his fellow scientists. Jamens continued, "Without even mentioning the overwhelming telepathic control all Chrysalis have upon all lower species, the technological prowess of Chrysalis scientific achievements like the cutter and heat rays, as well as the complete protection of the gravity drive shield and light speed capability of our warcraft are demonstrable evidence of your lies." Peering around the room and seeing agreement etched across the faces of his colleagues emboldened the doctor to growl, "I demand to see your superior officer. Your story is traitorous on its face." Shrugging his shoulders and cocking his head to the side, Whatsit looked at Dr. Guyi and nodded. "Of course, Doctor." With his eyes still locked on Guyi, Whatsit requested, "Colonel, would you mind helping me out?" The larger of the 2 Chrysalis soldiers stood and walked over to join Whatsit, motioning him to step back. Turning to the remaining soldier in the corner, he ordered, "Major, please fetch the human female and bring her before this august group." Nodding, the soldier stood and left the room. A moment later, a bipedal animal everyone in the room recognized as one of the semi-intelligent humans who infested planet HG-281 opened the door, stepped into the room, and walked over to stand beside the Chrysalis colonel. The human animal showed no fear as she stood next to the towering Chrysalis. Dr. Guyi's eyes narrowed when he noticed one of the blue stone necklaces hanging around the neck of the human and the very obvious black pistol holstered around the being's waist. The Chrysalis colonel said, "Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce you to Major Rebecca May Chang, one of the leaders of the military defenders of Earth, the real name of planet HG-281. Watching the small female human cross her arms in an insolent manner inappropriate for a subservient lower life form, a concerted gasp escaped from the throats of all the Chrysalis scientists as a strong, crisp, telepathic message entered their minds like a hot stiletto blade stabbed into their skulls. I've never seen so many live tricks in one place in my life. You're lucky you were asleep in a megaliner and not on board the motherships we blew out of the sky." The sheer power of the telepathic statement from the human female flowed across the brain of Jamens Guyi like a sharp, hot breeze, and he instinctively took a step backward in a fear response. Even the glorious emperor, His Majesty Ter Hurkunt, who Jamens had consulted several times in his life, had never displayed such raw mental power. Gathering his dignity about him as best he could, Guyi blustered, "What is the meaning of this? You dare to sully the importance of this meeting with an insolent animal? This thing should be kneeling before us, begging for the mercy of a swift death." Instead of cowering in fear, the human called Major Rebecca May Chang turned her head to Whatsit and inquired, "Is a superiority complex just a natural part of the Chrysaliman psyche? Or is there a required elementary school indoctrination involved?" Shrugging his shoulders and smiling, Whatsit replied, "Until the last couple of weeks, the Chrysaliman race had never suffered a defeat. I'm afraid the superiority complex is quite ingrained." Their exchange was interrupted by the incredulous Jaemins Guyi. "I demand you cease conversing with this animal as if it was your equal. Your conduct is embarrassing, and furthermore—" His mental tirade was cut off as if he had been slapped in the face by his angry former wife who had divorced him many years earlier for the wanton indignities she had suffered as his spouse. "Oh, stick a sock in it, Guyi," Chang admonished as she turned to face him. Still upset at the odd proceedings and jolted again by the power of the Earth Being's thoughts, Jaemins stammered hotly, "The name is Guyi, Dr. Jaemins Guyi, not Guyi. Furthermore, I will not subject myself to some kind of ignorant, animalistic ritual involving a stick and a sock." Yeah, whatever," Chang replied with narrowed eyes. "I think a demonstration is in order," announced the colonel, who had been silently watching the entire exchange between Guyi and Chang. Pointing to a slab of metal in the corner of the room, held upright by a heavy metal stand, he continued, "Would a couple of you who are metallurgists please examine the metal and advise everyone what it is?" 2 Chrysalimans came forward and took several moments to examine the metal. Overall, the material was dark gray in color. The slab was 2 feet wide, 4 feet high, and 6 inches thick. The edges of the slab appeared to be black glassine, as if the metal had been heated to some tremendous temperature, causing it to melt and change its fundamental molecular properties. Using a set of calipers and what appeared to be a portable device for spectrographic analysis, it was only a matter of moments before the Chrysalimans nodded to each other. Turning to the crowded room, one of them said, "My name is Dr. David Mikkel, and prior to being assigned to this colonization mission, I was the department head of metallurgical sciences at the University of Chrysalis. My colleague standing here is Dr. Than Hanber, professor of the Department of Hybrid Plasticized Elements." Noting the approving murmurs from the others in the room, Dr. Mikkel continued, "Our analysis confirms this metal is a part of the armor plate from the outer hull of a mothership. The substance is known as armorium. It is a dense amalgam of polyatomic alloys with a tensile strength of 10,000 megapascals. In other words, this substance is extremely durable and capable of deflecting all known forms of radiation and energy weaponry. In fact, this hybrid metal is manufactured by combining 3 different alloys together while all are in molten form. Once the 3 alloys are mixed, there is no known method for machining the substance since it is so physically hard. As a result, the hulls of motherships are poured into standard plate forms and held in place by a framework constructed of armorium." Turning his head toward the colonel and Whatsit, Mikkel said in a curiously awed tone, "This plate of armorium appears to have been removed from a larger section. I can tell from the glassine appearance of the edges that some kind of high-energy plasma was used to remove it. I know of nothing powerful enough to penetrate the outer surface of armorium, much less cut out to slabs such as stands before us here." Pausing a moment and shaking his head with a wide-eyed expression, Dr. Mikkel asked, "What in the world cut through this material?" Instead of answering the question, Whatsit pulled his cut-ray pistol from its holster on his bandolier and handed it to Dr. Hanber. Confirming he had the attention of everyone in the room, Whatsit said, "Sir, will you please confirm the armorium is proof against a military cut-ray pistol by firing the pistol at the slab?" Looking for approval from Dr. Mikkel and getting a nod, Hanber directed the cut-ray beam at the slab, holding it steady on one spot near the center of the plate. A cut-ray pistol could melt through 4-inch armor steel plate like a hot knife through butter. After directing the ray beam at the same spot on the armorium for 30 seconds, Hanber turned it off. Other than a barely glowing yellow spot on the surface of the armorium, which faded back to the original dark gray color, there was no change to the metallic surface. To emphasize the fact that there was no effect on the armorium from the destructive beam of the cutter ray, Dr. McKell rubbed his bare fingers over the spot to confirm the armorium had cooled to room temperature virtually instantaneously. Handing the pistol back to Whatsit, Hanbur shrugged his shoulders, spread his palms in an "I told you so" pose, and asked, "Now what?" "Now it's my turn," the female human announced, and pulled the small black pistol from its holster at her waist. Seeing she had everyone's rapt attention, Becky explained, "This device is known as a McPherson atomizer, or MA pistol. It's designed to project a cutter ray, a heat ray, or an MA ray. I have it set to emit an MA ray. We have larger weapons equipped with MA rays, but they are not safe to fire within the confines of any vessel." Motioning for Dr. McKell and Dr. Hanbur to move away from the slab of armorium, Becky pointed her MA pistol at the slab. "Really? You actually expect me to believe your toy gun can—" Jamin's Gui smirked. The rest of his comment was drowned out by the growling hum of the MA ray. A 1-inch wide beam of white light filled with sparkles that winked on and off and flowed in dazzling swirls leaped out of the black crystal at the end of the barrel of the MA pistol. Becky swept the beam across the middle of the slab, neatly and instantly cutting it in two. The bell-like clang as the top half of the 6-inch thick armorium slab landed on the deck was deafening. Silence filled the room. As if to convince himself that what he had witnessed was real, Dr. McKell bent down to the piece of armorium lying now on the deck and tried to pick it up. Perhaps in the belief his analysis had been wrong, and the slab was just a piece of lightweight plastic. Lifting with all his might, his eyes bulging from the physical effort, the Chrysalis professor couldn't even rock the 400-pound block of metal. Hearing a scruff on the deck behind him, Dr. McKell heard the female human named Becky Chang say, "Here, let me help you with that." Rising to his full height from where he had bent over the slab trying to lift it, Dr. McKell towered over Becky by at least 2 feet and outweighed her by 150 pounds. With no hesitation, the human bent down and picked up the 400-pound armorium block, carried it over to the table in front of Jamin's Gui, and dropped it on top of his dinner plate, smashing what food he had left and the plate into 1,000 pieces, and putting a 2-inch deep dent in the top of the table.